So, you want to be a raider, huh? Perhaps you watched bald men and cat girls chasing worlds first this past week and decided that you want to go party up with your friends, or lack thereof, and enjoy getting DDoSed and lost in the endless abyss of Party Finder firsthand. Well, you're in luck. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Kurojaku, and today I will be breaking down all the details that you need to know about getting all geared up for not just this new raid tier, but any future raids down the line. Well, assuming no major game-changing overhaul comes in 8.0, in which case I'll just have to remake a new one. But for now, let's get into it. Now, gearing during the MSQ has always been very simple. Farm your poetics each and every expansion, get the best poetic gear available from Miss Rowena, and you're all set for the next 10 levels. But level cap gearing is not as simple, cause this wouldn't be Final Fantasy XIV if it wasn't overly roundabout and complicated for no apparent reason. First thing to note, each raid tier marks the start of a new gear cycle, as I like to call it. While there is gear that release in between raid patches, such as from Alliance raids and a couple other sources, these are usually just there as catch-up gear for casual players or alternate jobs that you can't be bothered to properly kit out. The first tier typically comes out a few weeks after a new expansion, the second during the X.2 patch, and the third and final raid tier in the X.4 patch, much like the Arcadian, which just released its final tier in 7.4 last month. Now, for the rest of this video, I will be using the current tier gear as examples, but like I said before, while the names of gear and the item levels may vary in future expansions, the same logic will likely still apply, unless Yoshi P makes a very big change. As for what gear we have available, first, we have what is referred to as capped tombstone gear. The Bygone Brass set at this moment, which is the highest item level gear available without entering a Savage. These are easily picked up at the tome vendor, with the only limit being time itself, hence the term capped tombstones, of which you can only get 450 per week. If you weren't already aware, once you reach level cap, you'll get access to 2 new tombstone types alongside the poetics you know and love. Tombstones of Mathematics at this time are the uncapped tomes, used for things like relic weapon materials and catch-up gear. And the Tombstones of Mnemonics are the current cap tomes that you will need for that sweet, sweet gear. In the short term, this means that you can only have a couple of pieces of tome gear going into week 1 raiding. But in the long term, you can collect it all and forego the rest of what I'm about to say if you are patient and willing to wait to enter Savage. Next up are the normal raid sets, which tend to be about 10 eye levels lower than the cap tome gear and are obtained from, you guessed it, the normal raids. This gear is also limited, however, as you can only get 1 token per raid per week for a total of 4. And as for how many you need per piece, it is 1 for an accessory, 2 for helms, hands, or feet, and all 4 for a chest or legs. Meaning the most in 1 week that you could get is 4 pieces of raid gear if you went for all jewelry pieces, or just a single raid chest instead. However, more often than not, the raid gear is almost always worse than just using the alternative, more on that in a moment, so you may want to ignore all of this that I just said entirely. They do still make for great filler sets if you aren't chasing the best in slot or looking to gear up an alt job on a budget. Why do I say on a budget? Well, that brings me to the last set of gear available at the start of the tier. Crafted sets, which sell for a premium, especially in the first 2 or 3 days. Don't let that green thumbnail fool you. Like, it has fooled some people that I know. If you are watching this, you know exactly who you are, by the way. WoW players, I'm telling you. Anyways, as I was saying, these sets are almost always the best possible gear you could take into the first week of Savage. A little short of tome gear, of course, but we can't have a full set of that right away anyways. The less informed may look and see that crafted and normal raid gear share the same item level, and so surely they must be pretty equal, right? That is not the case. For you see, while 2 pieces of the same slot for the same job with the same item level will have matching vitality and main attribute stats, strength for example on a tank, the actual secondary stats will vary, both in which stats are on the gear at all and where those sub-stat points are being prioritized. This is why pieces that have more desirable substats, such as crit, direct hit, and determination, are more effective, and even in some cases simply avoiding a stat like skill speed, which I myself do on all my tanks, that alone can be the difference maker between 2 equal item level pieces. Crafted gear, intentionally, leans towards having the ideal stats over the raid gear. Likely Square Enix's means of keeping crafters in check and always important and needed. Personally, I wish that they would just take the weekly cap off normal raid gear entirely if this is going to be the case, but for now, this is how things are. And before I get too far ahead of myself, weapons tend to be a special case, since they are the single most impactful gear piece out of all of them. Uncapped tome weapons are unobtainable till week 8 of normal raids being available. This is because you need a once per week drop from the 4th fight to obtain the tome weapons, 8 of them to be exact, hence the 8 weeks. Normal raids do not have any weapon at all, and crafted weapons are the most straightforward way to get a weapon week 1. However, there is usually a better option to start Savage with, and that is to clear the latest extreme, either with a crafted weapon or sometimes, depending on what patch you're in of the expansion, there may even be a relic weapon to use instead. These extreme weapons tend to sit right between the crafted set and the tome weapons, making them best in slot for week 1 Savage. Besides, you really ought to clear the extreme before even attempting a Savage anyways. If you can't get through an EX, you certainly are not ready for the difficulty spike of Savage, especially on week 1. Now, like I said before, more than likely you'll be looking for crafted gear in any slot that isn't already being filled with a capped tome gear piece. But if you aren't certain and would like to double check, there is this useful little Discord called The Balance, which will usually have full gear sets planned out within a day or two of a new patch dropping, along with all the info that you'll need on which materia to put on your gear and even which food is the current choice for this patch. Materia itself is very straightforward. Just do what The Balance says, or if you're too lazy to look, just kind of default to this order, that's how it works. Crit, then direct hit, and then determination. If you're about to overcap the stat maximum for that piece, go to the next stat in the line. Nice and simple. One last thing to mention, you can always attempt to retrieve your materia from gear when it becomes time to swap it out for a better piece. It is random, but you may as well try. And that is all I have for you lads and ladies today. Of course, Savage itself has gear, not to mention upgrading your crafted and tome gear, but those are all things that tend to happen later in the patch cycle and will not be available right now. I will likely do a follow-up video to this one when that time comes, probably around 7.5, but for the sake of time and keeping this straight to the point of taking a fresh level 100 player and getting them ready for extremes in Savage in the first few weeks of a new tier, this will do for now. If this has been helpful in any way, by all means, please share it with all the little sprouts you see. Just smash this in their face, peel their eyeballs open, make them look, make them learn a few things. Maybe Party Finder will be less of a hellscape one day. It won't. It'll only get worse. We all know it. It'll only get worse. And of course, like and subscribe for that follow-up that I mentioned. But all that being said, goodbye for now. Until next time.